Hey, everybody. Welcome in to a Week 18 edition of the Establish the Run First Look Show. Absolutely crazy that it is the last week of the regular season. Unsure if we'll be doing these in the playoffs, maybe for the early rounds, but we'll take a look and see. Sorry, coming to you on the later side of the Tuesday. Usually do Tuesday at 11 a.m., doing Tuesday at 11 p.m. Eastern for this for a couple of reasons, but one, just seems trivial, obviously, to be talking about fantasy football right now with what happened last night in the Bills game with the unfortunate incident with Damar Hamlin, and obviously just wishing him and everyone involved the absolute best and prayers going his way. We forget about how lucky we really are, me and my colleagues and all of us really, just to escape from our lives and care about football and gambling and fantasy and DFS and all of these, silly and as I said, kind of trivial things compared to, what could happen out on that field for what really seemed like a remarkable young man, or what seems like a remarkable young man. And just, been a lot today to think about. And, the league will move on and roll on, rather, I should say. Definitely not move on, roll on. And there will be DFS for us to talk about in Week 18. So we'll do just that, and we'll take a quick first look at the upcoming main slate on Sunday, the final week of the regular season. All of that aside, I hope everyone had a great New Year and have their New Year personally off to a great start. And I appreciate all of you having been along on these first look videos with me so far this year. As you know, I've been saying it since the beginning of the season. The purpose of these videos isn't to get too in depth or anything like that, really just to, gather a first look, start transitioning our heads from one slate to the other, and, really start getting ourselves in the mindset of what plays, what kind of constructions, what kind of value options, what kind of spend up options maybe we'd be looking for DFS tournaments on DraftKings in the coming weeks. So we'll do just that here today. Week 18, you can see what I have up there right now is not quite the DraftKings slate, which we will have up as well, but it's Adam Levitan's Week 18 playoff motivation article. Week 18 is a carnival for DFS and fantasy purposes. Used to be Week 17, the final week of the regular season always is. And, within that, there could be some more edge. But one of the other reasons I wanted to do this first look show a little bit later, mainly it took a while for DraftKings to get the slate out. For me to analyze pricing and everything like that. But moreover, we are waiting to kind of have things straighten out as far as motivation, where there's still going to be a lot of like player incentive stuff that hasn't really been reported on yet that could impact this kind of thing. And just to figure out who makes sense to play. Now, like taking a stand on teams that may be 50-50 to play or have less to play for than other teams can be one of those ways to get motivation, to get unique on the field and to gain some leverage. But what we're going to do today, instead of kind of the normal position by position that I do, because this is another 13 game slate. It's a huge one with a ton of up in the air and a ton of question marks and just a ton that is hard to evaluate right now, especially on Tuesday evening. What I want to do is kind of just go game by game quickly, and we'll take a look at Adam's motivation article, as we go here, talk about what teams have to play for, and then I'll highlight any player notes that I think make sense from a DFS purpose. I think this will be a little less in depth than I normally get on these shows, even though they're super fast paced. I usually, try to break down most of the guys at each position with my first quick analysis on how I'm thinking about them before the slate. I don't think this week will be that in depth. Just a couple things off the top. As I mentioned, 13 game slate, last one of the regular season. Teams off this slate. We have 2 games on Saturday. There will be a DraftKings main slate for that as well. A 500K, I believe, up top in the lotto. We'll have projections and analysis for all of that stuff throughout the week as well. So keep an eye on the website if you're a subscriber. But those two games do have meaning. Chiefs and Raiders are the Saturday game, and then Titans and Jaguars is a Saturday night game. That game is playing for the AFC South. That's straight up an important game for both teams. The Raiders have been eliminated, but the Chiefs do have a chance at the 1 seed, and they will clinch it with a win in Vegas now that the Bengals and Bills game is not happening before Week 18. So they obviously have something to play for. And then Sunday night, we have the Lions and the Packers, another game that has something to play for, where if the Seahawks lose on this main slate, whoever wins that Lions or Packers game would get that last playoff spot. I believe that is the case. Let me double check on that here. So Seahawks win, Lions are eliminated if Seahawks lose, and then the Lions win. Right. So the Lions-Packers game could be a direct win and in for the 7th seed in the NFC. All right. That being said, we'll go quickly. And what I'm going to do is go back and forth between these two tabs here, between the motivation article and the games. We'll just go in order of these games here for talking about what makes sense from a fantasy purpose. So Baltimore, Cincinnati, first and foremost. Obviously, the Bengals, now that the game didn't happen on Monday night, or, it was suspended on Monday night, I do not think they can get the number 1 seed now. So what they can play for is the number 2 seed. If they win and the Bills lose, and both these teams play at 1 o'clock, so they could play for the 2 seed. So it sounds like they'll play. And then the Ravens also have a bunch of different seeding options that they could play for. They can either finish 3, 5, or 6. So I'd imagine both of these teams do go out there and play. That said, I certainly think Joe Burrow will be a tournament option here. Obviously, kind of be well rested, given that game didn't happen, on Monday night. Baltimore is a team that has had some people pass on them throughout the season. This game is back at home in Cincinnati. I think they'd want the opportunity for that 2 seed potentially. Bills don't have a walk in the park in their game. So I like Burrow for sure. We'll see what happens with Lamar. I'm going to guess that he's just not going to play once again here. They already have their playoffs locked up. So that's probably another week of Tyler Huntley, who is super, super cheap if he does go at 4,900. But I think it's such a huge slate. And he's shown not even a semblance of a ceiling at all, that I'm not really interested in going there. Running backs in this game, Mixon makes tournaments, not so interested necessarily in the Ravens guys. Receivers, Chase, Higgins, definitely in Burrow stuff will be in play. You could throw Boyd in your large field tournament pool, and I'm not interested in any Ravens receivers. And then tight end, Mark Andrews will be on play after finally, as we suspected, was due for a bounce back, caught all 9 targets for 9 catches and 100 yards on Sunday against the Steelers. Hayden Hurst also still very cheap at 3,100. Had 3 quick targets in the game. I believe he had 2 catches quickly in the game that was suspended against Buffalo. So he's right back in, assimilated into that offense. He could be in play. All right, Tampa Bay, Atlanta. Nothing to play for here for Tampa Bay. They are locked in to the 4 seed. So they can't go higher or lower with Tom Brady being as old as he is. I imagine they sit people. So could be some value here on Tampa. I'm guessing Blaine Gabbert does start. It's not a bad matchup for against Atlanta. That would be large field, deep MME stuff, or only probably too thin from a ceiling perspective. Definitely not going to Fournette. Maybe, wait for some reporting on how they're going to handle the running backs, but you could probably go to Keyshawn Vaughn possibly. Same thing here with receivers. There may be some real value in like Perryman and Scotty Miller and these guys that for certainly you could play. On the Atlanta side of things, I think they'll just play as normal, get more reps under Ritter's belt here. This is in Atlanta. Obviously not interested in Ritter. I think you can go back to Algier, who's been one of, a league winner potentially for people in fantasy leagues, but not an easy matchup necessarily against that Tampa Bay front. However, if it's back against backups, I think I like Algier a little bit more, who's underpriced here at 5,600. London would be the only guy I'm interested in on the receiver front. Tight ends in either of this game, not particularly interesting to me. All right, New England Buffalo game. Both teams have something to play for. Buffalo has a long road to the 1 seed now. They need to win and have the Chiefs lose. So they'll know on Saturday if they are playing for the 1 seed. So it's possible that they aren't, but the Bills still need to win to clinch the 2 seed on Sunday. So I believe that they will play. And then, the Patriots can just get in. They're winning in, they're losing out. So both these teams have something to play for sure. Obviously, Josh Allen. He'll be in play as the most expensive quarterback on the slate. No issues there. Not going to Mac Jones in Buffalo. Definitely not. Bills running backs, I prefer more in correlation. Don't love the Ramondre Damian Harris thing now that that's more back to being a split. Tough matchup against the Bills. Wide receivers here, certainly not the easiest matchup in the world. New England secondary is definitely good, but Stephon Diggs, and now he's under 8K. That's a really cheap price for Diggs, and I believe they'll be playing. And then on the other side as well, I think these receivers will be okay. Some questionable tags here, so watch out, but they'll probably be playing from behind. You could beat the Bills a little bit through the air. So as far as Jacoby Myers and them are concerned, potentially Hunter Henry, those guys could be in your tournament player pool. That's a game that, both teams should show up and play. Minnesota, Chicago, not as much. Minnesota does not have much to play for here. They can't get the 1 seed. They can fall lower than the 3 seed. They would clinch the 2 seed if they win and then the Niners lose, which they won't know the Niners status because they play before them. The question is, what Adam says here, how much do the Vikings care about a somewhat unlikely shot at the number 2 seed or resting their starters and just locking in the number 3 seed? So I would be questionable about using too many Vikings here. But if you hear some good news, it is a good matchup for them against Chicago, where they are going to play guys like the field may be off it a little bit as they're a little scared here. So that's something to consider. Fields on the other side is a really good play this week. The Vikings have just been absolute funnel again in the past. Now, obviously that's not where Fields has been doing his damage, but we did see games earlier in the year where he was getting, even if it was 180 yards, 2 or 3 touchdowns, then you add what he brings on the floor. I like Fields quite a bit this week. Chase Claypool should have another week under his belt, so at least his weaponry is a little bit better. Kmet is involved as well. Kirk Cousins, if they do decide to play, would be maybe a sprinkle as a kind of a contrarian play. And then all these guys in this game look good. I mean, Minnesota against Chicago against Minnesota, both good matchups for either side of how you look at this. Dalvin Cook was disappointing last week, but if he's getting a full workload in this good matchup, you'd have to like that. This game in general has a 45.5 over under, which is actually at early look one of the higher ones on the entire main slate. So that's something to consider. Receiver wise, Jefferson was disappointing last week, only 15 yards. So that pursuit of 2,000 is likely not going to happen for him. But definitely a solid matchup here for him. I'm not as interested in the other Vikings receivers in this spot. Claypool would make my player pool probably, and that's it for the Bears side. Kmet definitely would be, boosting him up in Fields lineups, and that would be about it there. Hawkinson, the role's really, really good. So if they're going to play, you can use them. But, again, some real concerns about Minnesota, Chicago as far as motivation is concerned. Houston, Indianapolis. This one actually has big motivations for draft purposes because, Houston get the number 1 overall pick. I think I heard this on the Bill Simmons podcast or something, but if I'm Indianapolis, I think strongly about throwing this game because you don't really want your rival to get the first overall pick. And then you also increase your draft pick odds. So who knows? This one could be a real shit show. Sam Ehlinger starting here. Hard to really get into too many people. Now, Zach Moss, though, and Deion Jackson get a great matchup against Houston run defense that's been the worst in the league all season. So that's something to consider. The receivers don't really look good on either side. Surprisingly, both these teams have been solid against outside receivers. That's not to say that some of these guys can't make your player pool, but this is a game that I kind of just want to avoid, except for maybe the Colts running backs. Jets, Dolphins. The Dolphins do have some motivation. Crazy. They've lost 5 or 6 straight now and look to be on the brink of elimination. They have to win and have the Patriots lose for them to get in, which is certainly possible because the Patriots are playing the Bills. And the Jets, though, certainly would want to play spoiler. And I guess I don't even know who's starting a quarterback for the Dolphins. 2 got hurt mid-game. Skylar Thompson came in. It's not the best look. Mike White, I think, would be in play on the other end of this. Miami's definitely been passable, probably have good weather there. You could pass on that Dolphins defense. So certainly tough spot for some of these Dolphins guys, especially if Skylar Thompson's at the helm. The Jets still do have a good defense. Zonovan Knight, I guess, can make a player pool. Tyreek Hill, again, really tough spot. But if there's a guy that I don't worry too much about one-on-one matchups with, it's Tyreek. So they're going to play. They'll definitely going to play. The game's going to be happening at the same time as the Bills game, so they don't really know what's going to be happening here. So Hill, I'm more interested in Hill than Waddle with those outside receivers. As great as Sauce Gardner's been, Tyreek is very hard to slow down. I doubt anyone really goes to him. We'll see who starts a quarterback, though. I would take it light on your exposure, but I wouldn't be ruling him out. Garrett Wilson and all these Jets were disappointing last week, but he still did have 11 targets. The offense just didn't really show up in Seattle. I do like this spot much better as a bounce back for Garrett Wilson. Elijah Moore also as a very cheap play would make my player pool. Tight ends here. Better matchups for the tight ends. I think Conklin can make your pool. Gesicki from the end zone last week, too thin though. Conklin in Jet stuff would be the guy I'm interested there. All right, moving on here to the next game, Carolina, New Orleans. This is a game that does not have any implications playoff-wise, just a divisional matchup where I believe both teams will try to play. So I don't see a reason why, unless coaches want to get some look at some, different types of players, I don't see any reasons why this wouldn't be too straight up. I'm not going to go to either of the quarterbacks here, though. I think it's pretty thin. Foreman, Hubbard, those guys, I guess, can make your player pool. We've seen these spike games from them if they get really run heavy. Kamara as well. would make my player pool as someone that, the role has been pretty solid since Mark Ingram went down with real carries, not as involved in the pass game as you want, but he would be in my player pool. And then better matchup though for the Saints receivers against a Carolina pass defense that's been pretty suspect. So Olave and then Rashid Shaheed, someone I wrote about in Cheap Wide Receiver Volume, wouldn't even be getting on this video if I was doing this in the normal format, but somebody that I think would be a cheap option once again. DJ Moore would be the only Panthers receiver I'm interested in. No interest here really in the tight ends. Cleveland, Pittsburgh. Cleveland's playing spoiler. Pittsburgh does have something to play for. They do need both the Patriots and the Dolphins to lose, but all these games are at 1:00. So no reason to think Pittsburgh won't play this straight up. This is a pretty good matchup here against Cleveland as well at home. So, again, I believe Watson will play spoiler. I'm not interested there. Kenny Pickett's too thin for DFS, but you can definitely get into some of these other guys. The Chubb matchup isn't so great as somebody that really the second half of the season just has not had these ceiling games. And now he's going into Pittsburgh front seven that's playing really well. No interest there. Najee, though, on the other end, Cleveland's been really successful against the run. The roll was great last week and was efficient through it. Still has the roll through the air. Only 6,100. Curious if he falls through the cracks a little bit. He seems like a very interesting tournament play to me, does Najee Harris. Wide receivers, Amari Cooper coming off a really strong game, 3 for 105 and 2 touchdowns last week. Obviously can make a player pool. The Pittsburgh receivers, just, I don't know, Deontay Johnson, just this is not his season at all. Pickens is a guy that usually makes my player pool, but, we have not seen these like spike games really out of him that we would have hoped. Peoples-Jones, someone that we've been looking at as a cheap receiver option for a lot of the year. I can take it or leave it in week 18 here. Tight ends, Njoku definitely makes my player pool, hit or miss, but he's one of the few tight ends that shows a 20-ish point ceiling in those range. So, he's in there, and Freiermuth can be in your player pool as well. All right, Giants, Eagles. This one's a pretty important one, given that the Eagles need to win to secure the 1 seed. Now, the Giants have absolutely nothing to play for. They are locked into the 6th seed. I do not expect Brian Daboll to come out and Tom Coughlin 2007, this thing where he plays these guys. The Giants are really thin personnel-wise. They've dealt with a lot of injuries on both sides of the ball, especially on defense. So I wouldn't expect them to play guys like Xavier McKinney, Adoree Jackson, if he might be ready to be back on the defensive side of the ball. Just makes no sense. And then on offense, I would expect Tyrod Taylor to start this game. Hard to go to anyone on the Giants side of things, and for value, right? Like Breida, Brightwell might be an option. Not the best matchup against these Eagles, but there could be some value here. Miles Sanders will definitely be in play at sub 6K. Again, the Eagles have to play this game straight up. He crushed the Giants when they played each other in week 14, and that was in New York. This is in Philadelphia. They control this game through Miles Sanders. I feel like in a lot of times this game may be played. That's the way it would go. 3 weeks separated from that huge game. Wonder if that takes the field off him a little bit. I think Miles Sanders is a very good tournament option. Receivers, the Eagles guys definitely over the main Giants guys. I doubt they play Hodgins, Slayton, Richie James too much, but there could be some weird stuff going on. Marcus Johnson, Galladay, I don't think is enough, but see who they call up over the practice squad. You could have some punts, dart throws in here on the Giants side of things. Tight ends, Goddard definitely would be in play for sure. Roll's been really good since he's come back. 9 targets in the 2 weeks that he's been back. Definitely like him in Hurts stuff. Hurts is a great play as well. Definitely all into the Eagles this week, not into the Giants. Other NFC East matchup at the same time, so these teams will not know what's happening. Washington has nothing to play for, but Dallas does, because if somehow the Giants can win, which is, again, very unlikely. I think they're like 14-point underdogs. But if they win and Dallas, if the Eagles lose and Dallas wins, Dallas would lock up the number 1 seed in the NFC East. So they definitely have something to play for. I like Dak. I actually made CeeDee Lamb the cover boy of the video. Washington has then been pretty suspect through the air in the second half of the season, and his role right now is just so freaking good. They are absolutely loading up on targets, design plays for CeeDee Lamb. I think they go early and often to CD in this game. So I really like CeeDee Lamb. McLaurin, Dotson, Samuel all make my pool. Probably a max 1 of Washington receivers, though, on week 18 on a huge slate like this. But all those guys make my pool. Gallup, big play guy, can make your pool as well. Running back wise, Pollard, we'll see if he goes. He's practicing tomorrow, so that's good sign. Zeke, for sure is an option as well. Been inefficient, but the role is there. Lag ask if there's a chance the Cowboys will sit their guys at halftime if they see the Eagles game is a blowout. I guess that's a possibility for sure. A lot of these teams go into these types of situations and try not to scoreboard watch. Their, coaches say, we're not looking at this kind of thing at halftime. That doesn't seem very realistic in this day and age of smartphones and social media and everything like that. So I doubt that they will not know what's going on in the other game. So sure, it's a possibility that some of the upside is taken off these guys. But we'll see. Take a look at ownership projections and see maybe that would dictate how you want to play these guys later in the week. Dalton Schultz would be in play for me as well. And that'll do it for that game. Chargers, Broncos. Chargers stuff, they can clinch the number 5 seed. And they need that win to clinch the 5 seed. So it actually is pretty big for them because they would face the winner of Titans, Jaguars instead of one of the Chiefs, Bengals, or Bills if they finish in the 6. So big spot for the Chargers here in Denver. That to me says you could throw Herbert in your pool. Although again, we've now gone an entire season of DFS and not had one Justin Herbert 30-point DraftKings game. Really disappointing considering how many times this team throws the ball. I don't know what it is. Brandon Staley, I think, holds him back big time, but he could be in your pool. Eckler for sure. Again, they need to lock up that 5 seed. The guy just does it week in, week out. Another 4 catches on 4 targets last week. Another 2 touchdowns on the ground. Very efficient, huge plays against the Rams last week. Not too worried about the matchup here against Denver at all. I actually think Kelly can make your pool as well. His role's been good. It'll be a large field MME, deep punt only, but I think it's okay. The Broncos running backs I also think are in play here. Latavius Murray, surprisingly being used in the pass game. Very clearly the RB1. The Chargers, you beat them on the ground, so he can make your player pool. Chase Edmonds did get involved last week, 7 rushes and 3 catches through the air. Maybe a late swap pivot type of play there. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams for sure in Broncos stuff. In Chargers stuff, obviously tougher matchup again against them through the air. Same thing on the Broncos side. You'd prefer to attack the run game on both these teams for sure. We saw Albert O, by the way, come back with Dulcich and did have 6 finally in week 17 after we were all excited about him in the offseason. 3 catches on 6 targets for 45 yards and a touchdown. All right, Arizona, San Francisco. San Francisco can still get to the number 1 seed, I guess. Okay. So take back what I said about the Cowboys. I guess they need the Niners to also lose for them to get the 1 seed, but the Niners can get the 1 seed with a win and an Eagles loss. The Cowboys need a win and a Niners and an Eagles loss. So the Niners are playing for the 1 seed still. So that's something to consider for sure. Another team that could be doing a scoreboard watching, as Lag mentions, for that Eagles game, but they'll be playing. And it's a good matchup. Kittle, been also another guy that's been winning leagues. Didn't have as good of a game last week as he did the week before that, but still has 8 targets and found the end zone. Clearly, Brock Purdy has a connection with him. This is a really good matchup where Arizona gets crushed against tight ends. So like Kittle a lot. Purdy, I think, maybe hand build type play. I don't know if he's got the ceiling you need on this particular slate. Christian McCaffrey, though, for sure does day-to-day with a mild ankle sprain. I don't know if they take it easy on him. Keep your eye there on news. Connor, tough matchup, but the role remains elite. Probably not as interested in him this week in the tough matchup. Receiver-wise, Hopkins obviously didn't play last week. Stay tuned to see if he does play. He's dealing with a knee something. If he does play, I think he's okay. We saw obviously Devontae Adams just dominate the San Francisco team through the air with Jarrett Stidham at quarterback. I don't see why DeAndre Hopkins can't come in to play some spoiler if he's healthy. Certainly would be in play. Debo looks like, he's close to being ready. I don't know if they'll save him for the playoffs, but, keep your eye on those news. Dortch, was chalk, and it seemed like it was good chalk. Did have 10 targets last week at Stone Mint, so something to consider. Hollywood Brown is cheap as well at 5,300. And then last game here is another big one. Seattle is playing for that 7 seed. They need to win, and they just need to win because the Packers game is Sunday night. So they're going to play to win. Now, the Rams can come in and play spoiler. Obviously, they did not play well last week, did the Rams, but they've been much better under Baker Mayfield than they were previously. And, obviously, they put up the 51 points against Denver. At least they're a team that could stay in this game, I think. And I don't see why they wouldn't want to play spoiler against a division rival. So I think they're going to be out there and playing. Seattle also has something to play for. So this is one of the few games that I think we could rely on. The team's really trying. It is a 41.5 point total, which again, a lot of these games are in the 30s. So something to consider. Geno would be in play for me. I'm not interested in Baker as a DFS play, but Geno would be in play. Kenneth Walker, I think, is now the Rookie of the Year favorite after another big game against a tough game against the Jets. He would certainly be on your radar. Cam Akers as well, who's been coming off another huge game. I mean, something switched in Cam Akers' head and his talent. He's definitely going to be in play here in a pretty good matchup as well. 5 yards of carry each of the last 3 games, another 120 yards on the ground. Looks like he's finding that burst back pre-Achilles injury. Glad that the Rams stuck with him. Obviously nice to see there. So he'd be in play for you. And then the receivers as well. Lockett played last week, another week separated from the finger injury. So hopefully he's okay. Lag mentions Geno doubles. Yeah, I think a Geno traditional double will be in play here for sure this week. And then you can bring it back with Akers or Jefferson or Atwell, guys that would make my player pool. Higbee as well against a Seattle team that's been very bad against tight ends. Conklin also had some success last week. That will really do it here for the first look. I know a little bit of a different format. Again, we took through motivation. Hopefully that was a little helpful for you. A little free article for you guys if you are not behind the paywall, but thought it was very easy to use Adam's motivation article to kind of take us through this first look. Again, hard for me to sit here and talk about football, but week 18, always a fun one. Again, prayers up, just prayers up to Damar Hamlin, prayers up to the Bills organization and everyone involved with that. Really puts things in perspective. And I hope that, all of you guys are okay. Give your loved ones a hug and everything like that. And, just let's hope and pray that the young man will be all right. I appreciate you guys, being with me this whole season on these first looks. It's been a blast for me to do. And I hope to be back with you next year for sure. And we'll see about the playoffs. Maybe for the early rounds, we can take a quick look for some of the bigger slates as well. So best of luck in the final week of the regular season in DFS. Best of luck to your teams if they're competing for playoffs. I know I'm a big laundry wearer over here. My Giants clinched up that 6th seed. So if you have a team that you're rooting for, I wish them the best of luck, unless it's the Eagles or the Cowboys. And I'm kidding, but best of luck to everyone out there. Hope you had a happy new year, and good luck, everyone.